Hi, this is the Unwilling Pawn. Initially, I had in mind, as I stated in my Larry Silverstein video, to work on the controlled demolition aspect of the 9/11 conspiracy, to get into that, the engineering aspects of it. But due to recent events, once the Taliban take over Afghanistan, then I felt that this war in Afghanistan angle should take precedence. Now, there are all arms to the theory, and are all therefore important, but this is what is fresh on people's mind. It certainly was in August, but it still is. The Taliban takeovers, Taliban still being talked about in the news, not as frequently as it was when they first took over back in August and September. But I think it's a perfect time to discuss this issue at length. The war in Afghanistan was, and still is, integrally linked to 9/11 and the war on terrorism. Recall that one of the excuses for going into Afghanistan was that the Taliban are harboring Osama bin Laden, enemy number one, and he was the mastermind behind 9/11 attacks, attacked us on 9/11, attacked America on 9/11, therefore we have every right to invade Afghanistan. We have every right to overthrow the Taliban's control over the country. Now, I'm going to break this paper up. It's a paper, and it really turned out to a research paper. It's like 40 plus pages. And obviously, I'm going to try to break up the blogs into parts. And there'll be two main sections. Really, American interests and India versus Pakistan interests. So, Indian subcontinent interest in Afghanistan. So those were effective and important. What India did, what Pakistan's involvement was heavily involved in the previous, in the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and of course when America invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan was always there. It's a neighboring country. America is always linked there. Lots of stuff going on, and India is always involved. India has its own objective, so we'll get to that eventually. But first, we're going to deal with the Western interest, because really, America, who started the war? It was the United States of America. So, main two parts, and then many subparts within each section. The main two sections of the war in Afghanistan, this series of videos, is going to be the Western section, and then the second section is going to be India and Pakistan section. And, all of their interests in Pakistan. So I'll break this paper up into multiple videos to explain everything, because I will be delving deep into all interests in Afghanistan and their relevance to 9/11. Amongst the list of subtopics for this arm of the 9/11 conspiracy are Eurasia, the mineral wealth of Afghanistan, oil and gas reserves of the Central Asian states, the Stans, Afghanistan's opium crop, the CIA, drug trafficking, Wall Street's money laundering, the Taliban, Osama bin Laden, America's war on terrorism, the India versus Pakistan rivalry, and the relationship between 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan. We will focus on these topics from the perspective of American interests in the region and that of India and Pakistan as well. And we'll express what these interests actually accomplished. We won't be doing this. We'll be doing it throughout. We're discussing it as we talk about, what happened and what the interests actually are and what they actually accomplished. And of course, we'll conclude. The conclusion is what really happened. What did America achieve? What did India achieve? What did Pakistan achieve? And really, no one achieved anything. But, we'll get into that. No one achieved anything except the people who made money off of it. The people who raised hell on earth. They achieved. No one else achieved anything. It was just losses, blood, and tears. That's all. Blood and tears. That's all we, the people of the world, got for all of this. Included in American interests will be those of all Western or other allies, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, European countries, and others, who joined in this and other wars because the United States strong-armed them into the conflicts with its "you're either with us or against us" policy. Now, that was more directed at countries like Pakistan. I get with the program. We need you to help us bomb the Taliban, or communicate with them, or let them know we're going to bomb them. Whatever. You're either with us or you're against us. It was like it was a threat. But it wasn't just limited to non-Western countries. It was also to European allies. Get with the program. You, Australia, you have nothing to do with this? Whatever. You're one of my Western allies? Get with the program. You're either with us, you're either with me, or you're against me. I insist on saying American interest, because these were all America's wars, and the rest just joined in because they were too afraid to refuse, fearing reprisal from the world's lone superpower. Of the world's $85 trillion combined GDP, that's official, legitimate, documented business, I think America's GDP is about 22 trillion or so, something of that sort. The latest figures, I mean, that's like pretty much 1/4. I think maybe even more. So, America, and of course the biggest military of the world, superpower. Superpower is enough. To say superpower, it's enough. The rest of the world, they're afraid. America's going to sanction us, shut us down. We're going to lose America's network. We won't be able to trade with America. America's going to starve us out. Could bomb us. By the time we're done, it'll be clear why America went into Afghanistan and what India and Pakistan wanted as well. What were their objectives? What were their reasons for getting involved? What compelled them? What did they want? What are their short-term goals, long-term goals? Since the excuse for the war in Afghanistan was the attacks against America on 9/11 and the Taliban's purported support for Osama bin Laden, analyzing interests in this war in depth will give us a greater understanding of what 9/11 was about and why the U.S. establishment needed it to happen. The mineral wealth of Afghanistan. That's the first topic we're going to cover. The rare earth elements. Rare earth metals are a collection of 17 elements that include the lanthanide series row on the periodic table of elements, atomic numbers 57 to 71, plus scandium and yttrium, atomic numbers 21 and 39, respectively. The rare earths have strong electromagnetic properties, particularly when interacting with the right types of elements. When combined with certain other elements, whether with gases or other metals, rare earths produce the components that form the basis of modern electronics, computing, and all disruptive technologies. Superconductors, hybrid car batteries, electric vehicles, permanent magnets, optical fiber communication systems, lithium-ion batteries, laptops, mobile phones, wind turbines, satellites, night vision goggles, rangefinders, aerial drones, guidance systems, lasers, hypersonic weapons, and the list goes on. I refer you to a brilliant video done by the Caspian Report. I've given the link in my blog here. You see, I give the link to the blog itself, and then of course the blog itself, the part of the research paper that covers this, is going to have the link to these YouTube videos, and they're very important, but they're very good to watch when you can spare time. So I refer you to a brilliant video done by the Caspian Report. It's called "Afghanistan Sits on $3 Trillion in Minerals." A direct quote from there. Rare earth elements are indispensable to modern nations, economies, and militaries. End quote. Afghanistan's mineral wealth has a potential value of $3 trillion. Note that obviously nothing's happened yet. Afghanistan's combined economy is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 billion. $20 billion. Nowhere near even $1 trillion. Just 20 billion, but the potential is there. Potential. And that includes rare earths, gold, copper, and more. And it sits on two main belts, as shown in the image I share. It's taken from the Caspian Report video. Note that Afghanistan's GDP, as I just mentioned, is currently in the neighborhood of $20 billion total, from a population of around 32 million. So just imagine what a $3 trillion mining industry would do for their economy. And because of the value to the modern world's economies and militaries, whoever can control this valuable minerals market would wield strategic power in the world. Not to mention the obvious economic gains. This is one of the reasons why Afghanistan is so important to the world in modern times. Currently, China has a virtual monopoly on the actual global rare earth market, producing 85% of the world's supply. I've given one link here as proof: rare earth elements market, industry share, size, growth, mortar intelligence. But, there's countless. I mean, this is not one of those disputed facts. Everyone knows this. China has the virtual monopoly on the rare earth market, with some Asia-Pacific countries producing most of the remaining 15%. Now, we discussed all of those, the things, the rare earths that depend on rare earth. Superconductors, hybrid car batteries, electric vehicles, all this modern technology. And just as a Caspian report quoted in a beautiful way, rare earth elements are indispensable to modern nations, economies, and militaries. United States has been desperate. We're talking about strategic control here now. Valuable resources. United States has been desperate for quite some time not to be dependent upon China for its rare earth needs. Here it's important to note that while $3 trillion is a large chunk of money, for reference, America, the largest economy of the world, the superpower, has an annual GDP of around $22 trillion, which is obviously all industries combined, not just mining. Still, far more important to America, China and Russia is the strategic to America, China, and Russia is the strategic advantage that control over the rare earths offers. So, for example, God forbid, if the U.S. and China go to full-scale war, not just proxy attacks and cyber attacks and this and that stuff, full scale, or trade wars and all this other stuff that's been going on. Full-scale war, God forbid, we're all screwed if that happens. Basically World War III. China can easily stop shipping components that require rare earths. So we talk about some of those the components, or some of the technology that depends on rare earths, night vision goggles, satellites, rangefinders, aerial drones, guidance systems, lasers, hypersonic weapons. All of this modern and powerful technology, which all of countries have developed and need, it requires rare earths. Now, what's China going to do? Hey, America, I'm going to give you rare earth metals so you can build weapons so you can attack me with. Obviously, they're going to stop shipping those components. They're going to embargo America. They require rare earths to the United States, so the defense contractors and military suppliers can't produce satellites, aerial drones, guidance system rockets, hypersonic weapons, submarine lasers, and all other modern weapons of war that depend upon the rare earths to function. This will give China huge strategic advantage in any future conflict. The war will be over before it even starts, and America wouldn't even start the war. It can't. It needs China to provide one of the very basic components of the weapons they need to wage war against China in the first place. You understand the dilemma here? And in this scenario, we are not even discussing the effect on multiple aspects of the economies from conflict, trade wars, etc. Of course, the world's powers would love to have control over these gems, and so would everyone else. This is one of the main reasons the United States of America was in Afghanistan for over 20 years, desperate to find a military solution, trying to pound the Taliban into submission, even when they knew that this wasn't happening. It's all for show, all to fool Americans. We beat the Taliban and we accomplished our goals. You accomplished nothing, and everything has been, you've been exposed. The Taliban just took over the country in a matter of months as soon as America left. They were basically fighting the Taliban to a standstill, with the Taliban making gains, psychological, social gains in the country. Military gains as well, but mainly social. They were either losing the Taliban or at a standstill, draw. 20 years. Because it was never about nation building. It was never about beating the Taliban. It was never about ideological conflicts and we don't agree with the Taliban and we're liberal and this and that's all made for TV drama. women's rights. I'm going to get into some of this drama. Had nothing to do with any of this. Think about how important these rare earths are to America. How desperate America is to have them. To not be dependent on China. Well, this failed miserably, America's campaign occupation of Afghanistan. It is also important to discredit America's narrative on the whole issue, that it was all about human rights, nation building, etc. All rubbish. I refer you to a tweet from CNN on August 23rd of this year, shortly after the Taliban takeover. I said this year, because that's when I first started writing this of 2021. Shortly after the Taliban takeover, after the U.S. troop withdrawal, in which CNN admits, and I've given the link here obviously in the blog, in which CNN admits why America was in Afghanistan and why America needs to stay forever, lamenting the loss of the mineral wealth. I also refer you to a brilliant analysis on this issue by a veteran, honest political analyst, Kyle Kulinski of the Secular Talk channel. CNN says the quiet part out loud, I think he meant to say, about Afghanistan. It's the name of the video. Again, the link's in the blog. These are just a couple of sources I liked. You can find countless articles, news clippings, and documentaries on American interests in the mineral riches of Afghanistan, dating many years back, throughout the occupation, and even some prior. The Soviets also learned of the riches beneath Afghani soil, but it was too late into their occupation. By the time they made any progress, they had to abandon their campaign, and the knowledge was left with a handful of Afghanis. The U.S., of course, knew about the Soviets' discoveries and still covets the mineral wealth of Afghanistan, particularly the rare earths. As stated before, it has less to do with the money element, because the $3 trillion potential won't be realized until after the mining industry is completely established, in Afghanistan of all places. Afghanistan is mostly mountainous terrain, and the logistics of heavy metals is going to be a great challenge. And then there's politics, Taliban, Northern Alliance, occupation forces, etc. And there's also the lack of infrastructure to deal with, water, electricity, etc. Development, this is a quote from the Caspian Report again, the development of a mining industry will have to take place alongside infrastructure projects and security measures. End quote. Sure, America has the technology, but this requires huge initial investment. Of course, once a thriving mining industry is established, the controlling power would have huge consultants and company executives who would make large sums of money. But the strategic advantage from being independent with respect to its rare earth needs was the key prize from America in Afghanistan. Now, due to America's failure in its occupation, China will most likely gain, incorporating Afghanistan into its Belt and Road Initiative and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, owing to its geographical location, but will benefit both of those main initiatives. So China's initiatives in the region and in the world, the maritime Silk Road and Silk Road economic belt. I've shared an image here. Afghanistan won't have much of a choice but to join the BRI and CPEC. Afghanistan neighbors Pakistan, so CPEC is really a part of Afghanistan, so it can be incorporated into CPEC and the Belt Road. If you look at the Belt Road location and the CPEC location from Gwadar to Islamabad to Kashgar, I think that's in China. So you can easily incorporate Afghanistan. So it's the natural, practical solution. It's the way going forward for their economy, and they don't have much of an economy in the first place. Not to mention a country that's been ravaged by war for the past 40 plus years. civil war and wars, occupations, attacks from other countries. It's a graveyard of empires, but it's also like a graveyard. There's nothing there anymore. A country that's truly been ravaged by war. Afghanistan won't have much of a choice but to join the BRI and CPEC, because if the Taliban's new government is to survive, China is the only power they can turn to in order to help them establish this mining industry and develop their economy and international legitimacy. Once they start making a working economy, then they'll be respected. Otherwise, they won't. And they'll lose power again. You can't feed the people, you're going to lose power, because America is going to sanction the hell out of Afghanistan. We're going to discuss this later, but think about Afghanistan has to import all of the wheat they have in the country, because all of the limited agricultural land, arable land, is being used for opium production. Agricultural part of the economy of Afghanistan is dominated by opium production. So there's just no fields for wheat crop or any other fruits and vegetables or anything that could possibly grow in Afghanistan's climate. They're going to have to import all the wheat, which is going to make bread super expensive. And the people who aren't benefiting from selling opium, how are they going to survive? For them, it's just bread is expensive. That's all they know. They're not making the superior gains, the more money for the farmers who are selling opium instead of wheat. So we'll get into that discussion more. But they all have no choice. They're not going to survive otherwise. Afghanis have already been at war with two of the world's great powers for the past 40 plus years. And they have had enough. It's now time for civil growth. Even under puppet leaders like Ashraf Ghani and Hamid Karzai, the then Afghani government signed deals and were in negotiation with Chinese companies to mine Afghanistan's copper and other deposits. Now that China will exert the most influence over the economic progress of the region, Chinese companies will dominate the landscape. Pakistan will play a key part in Afghanistan's future due to its shared border, access to seaports, and its religious and ethnic affiliation with Afghani people. Any way you look at it, BRI and CPEC are the only way forward for Afghanistan. This will undoubtedly make many countries unhappy, the US, Europe, and India, to name a few. Once China completely incorporates Afghanistan into its BRI and CPEC, sky's the limit, and China will establish an even stronger foothold on its monopoly of the global rare earth market. Hard to let go of rare earths. In the aftermath of America's failed war in Afghanistan, you will find many of you have seen, obviously I wrote this back in, and I started writing this back in August of 2021, so you've already seen all of these people. Many amongst the establishment and their servants and the corporate media lamenting the mineral riches having slipped through America's grasp and into the hands of China. And you will hear the warmongers beating the drums of war for endless occupation in Afghanistan. If we don't leave, what's going to happen to the people? You will see them throw each other under the bus for abandoning Afghanistan. President Biden is an ideal example of this. He was the hero who saved America from big bad Trump and was able to beat Trump in the election. And now he's being, and Trump's got this ball rolling. Trump got it started. It wasn't Biden who got this started. This peace talks with Afghanistan, this was going to happen whether Biden was in power or somebody else was in power. The American ruling elites had already decided that we don't want to spend any more time in the graveyard of empires. This was finalized during Biden's administration. That's just a matter of timing. It had nothing to do with whether Trump wanted it or not. Of course, Trump said he wanted it, and he got the ball rolling. He got everything started. He got Pakistan involved. Hey, get me out of Afghanistan. Help me. And of course, Biden closed the deal and finalized it, made it happen. And he deserves credit for that. But he's not getting credit in the American media. President Biden is an integral part of the U.S. power elites. Yet look at the way the corporate media turned on him after the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, as if it was all his fault. Oh, he's ruined everything. He did it the wrong way. No matter what you did, it was going to end up like this. But just so desperate to stay in Afghanistan forever and ever and ever. Gotta blame someone. Gotta throw someone under the bus. And then happened to be President Biden. If this happened during Trump's administration, he'd be thrown under the bus. The liberals will be jumping up and down, war in Afghanistan, till the end of time. We have to be there to protect the women. By and large, Americans wanted the war to end, their remaining troops to be brought home, and domestic issues prioritized. For endless occupation, I give a link here. WikiLeaks exposes CIA report, use feminism for endless war. Now that's just, one source, and I'll use that source again when I get into more talking about the military-industrial complex and such. But I refer up to a poll here discussed by Kyle Kalinske, that same analyst. I really like a lot of his work. He's honest. He's one of those veteran, honest political analysts. You don't get many of them, and that's why he's not liked by a lot of mainstream characters, because he tells it a little too much like it is, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that honest criticism of America's objectives. They say, no, we have positive. We're fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. And he's like, no, we're not. So they don't like him. But, I like that. I like someone who's honest. And so he talks about a poll here. And this is not breaking news for average Americans. Of course, Americans desperately wanted out of Afghanistan, achieving nothing, and really didn't achieve anything. It was public pressure that made Trump promise to withdraw, and Biden actually followed through. No matter when America pulled out of the war, the result would have been similar to what we have all seen. But still, they threw Biden under the bus. Why? Because it's hard to let go of the rare earths, of control over the rare earths, or the potential to get control over the rare earths. Hard to let go. Okay, now that we've discussed the details of all of these aspects of strategic control, all of the mineral wealth, or why mineral wealth was so important to the ruling elites of the U.S. and other powers as well, but particularly U.S. I wanted to just give an update on our case, the case that we're making about 9/11 conspiracy theory, that whether 9/11 conspiracy theory is true, comparing that to a murder case, for example, with motive. What is the motive for the killer to commit the crime? Prior knowledge, for example. So we discussed prior knowledge. I believe I mentioned it, but maybe if I didn't discuss it properly. So obviously you have Larry Silverstein and World Trade Center. Larry Silverstein and others were conveniently not present in their own towers on the day of attacks, even though having meals at those towers was part of their daily routine. Routing. I think I said routing here, but anyway, routine prior to the 9/11 attacks. Why would any real estate... There's another point. Why would any real estate developer take on billions of dollars of liability, asbestos abatement, by winning the bid of condemned buildings, unless they knew they could recover the money through terrorist attacks covered by the policy? The co-lease holders of the Twin Towers and owner of Building 7 of WTC all knew each other, are good friends, are Jewish, have similar high-level political contacts, support similar political organizations, causes, and leaders. So all the reasons and the details behind each of those points was given, but I kind of summarized those points and put them here in this case, like making a case against those who were behind 9/11. Like, what was the reason? Like, what they had prior knowledge, or these are indications of prior knowledge. Just like a conspiracy, prior knowledge / conspiracy. They all knew each other. They all had motives for being together. So they had prior knowledge of what's going to happen. Just indications of prior knowledge. So, and then motives. Larry Silverstein always dreamed of acquiring the World Trade Center. He is now an owner or leaseholder or co-leaseholder of all WTC complex buildings, all made possible by the 9/11 attacks. The New York, New Jersey Port Authority and later Silverstein and Coley's holders were initially liable for asbestos abatement. The destruction of the towers by terrorism covered in the policy saved everyone's day except the insurance companies, who had to foot the bill. Larry Silverstein got to reconstruct building number 7 of WTC due to its destruction during the attacks. The building he agreed was a lemon for him due to his poor management. Larry Silverstein and Coley's holders made $4.55 billion off of insurance settlement because of 9/11 attacks. So those were the motives relevant to Larry Silverstein and the World Trade Center, which I discussed in the first part, in the first video I did on these 9/11 conspiracy theory videos. So now I talked about the mineral wealth, and we're not even done with Afghanistan, but we have other angles to discuss: drug trafficking, the opium, obviously, and oil and gas. So we're going to do oil and gas next, but this whole section has 3 main points that I thought relevant to motive, and this has all to do with motive. Like, you say you were in Afghanistan only to, fight for the women and fight against those dirty conservative, mean old Taliban and all that stuff. I mean, that was the drama that was presented to the American people and to the entire world. That was sold to the people of the world as the real reason why you were behind 9/11, or sorry, why you had to go into Afghanistan. But if it turns out that obviously you had huge motives, like in a murder case, for example, like you say, I had no reason to kill this person. Later, it turns out it's about insurance money, or there was incentive about personal reasons, like somebody maybe slept with your wife or something, that you had a reason to kill him. So there was an incentive there. It could be revenge, it could be money, it could be a number of things. And if we're talking about the United States being behind 9/11, obviously knowing all the needs that America has, it's so convenient that this is the same country that you need to attack, and it's the same country that was behind 9/11, supposedly supporting Osama bin Laden. It's the same country that has all the needs you need, like mineral wealth, oil and gas, and there's so many other. It's like killing 10 birds with one stone. So Afghanistan sits on $3 trillion worth of minerals, including the rare earths. If the U.S. occupation had succeeded, this mining industry would have been completely under American control. Rare earths produce the components that form the basis of modern electronics, computing, and all disruptive technologies, and as such are indispensable to modern nations, economies, and militaries. Because America doesn't have its own rare element. Now, this was a little outdated, but America has started to develop it. But anyway, at that time, it didn't have its own industry. So it was desperate to develop and control the mining industry in Afghanistan. So obviously, with that failing, and especially in 2010, when things were at its extreme. So I mentioned 85%. China has 85% of the industry, rare earth market or global market. In 2010, it was even worse. It was 95%. Now it may have decreased to 70% or 75% or 80%, but it fluctuates depending on what America's trying, or what sources for rare earths America's trying, or trying to get and try to develop of its own. Are those resources limited, or how limited they are? How long are they going to last? How many years? So obviously, other countries like Australia and America, as I showed from the graph earlier. For that picture earlier, that they're trying. Obviously, they have to, but Afghanistan would have been huge if America could get its hand on, and how desperately it's needed, especially the military example. So China produces 85% approximately. We don't know that fluctuates depending on what's going on in the world. Produces 85% of the global rare earth element supply. Since these elements are essential to modern militaries and China is a rival power, America couldn't afford to lose the strategic control, especially to China, and continue to be dependent upon China for its rare earth needs. So I mentioned that if China or Afghanistan ever employs China to come in, and help them with their rare earth needs, what's that going to do for the market? What's that going to do for China? It's just China has even more control. And then becomes rest of the countries, including the United States, especially the United States, become dependent on China. So we have to get all those rare earths from China. And then they control the military, all the modern weapons. They control all the modern economies, hybrid technologies, all of that stuff. Everything that I showed earlier, that this is what this rare earth element is good for, so important for all modern electronics, computing, and all disruptive technologies. And it's so essential, indispensable to modern nations, economies, and militaries. So all of these huge incentives, it's all just convenient. It's the same country that Osama bin Laden supposedly being harbored in. It's quite a big coincidence, isn't it? So the point is, all of these big coincidences, by itself may not be proof of enough, but it's a huge incentive. And anyone investigating any crime has to look at all the incentives that are on the table before 9/11. Which goes to what? That of course you were behind 9/11. You needed it to happen so you could get your hands on the mineral wealth, so you can get your hands on the oil and gas. Now we're going to talk about the oil and gas. We will only talk about the mineral wealth for this one video. So as we're just building to the case, and a lot of these are going to be, especially the war in Afghanistan related, a lot of it will be related to incentives, but we're going to talk about a lot of prior knowledge and stuff as well, because it was related to the happenings that were going on at that time. So we'll look at that. But I wanted to give this little update, and I'll continue to give this update, and as I revise and edit all of these videos, just so it's crystal clear throughout. We're kind of on the same page as to why these things are so important to the 9/11 conspiracy theory case. Okay, so that's it for this part 1 of this series of videos on the war in Afghanistan, of the debacle in Afghanistan. Call it what you want. This was just the mineral wealth of Afghanistan, what we're discussing, the strategic control, the rare earth elements, the strategic control, and the lamenting of losing control of the rare earths. And next we're going to get into oil and gas of Central Asia. But that's for the next part. I want to try to keep these videos as short as possible, but one of the issues, a lot of people say, okay, make short videos. I can't. These topics are too in-depth, and to discuss them at any reasonable amount of length is going to take some time. So I apologize for the videos being longer than typical people want. I know most people's attention span is not that great for serious topics, for something besides entertainment, especially on YouTube. But you got to do justice to the subject, and especially my way, this scientific, intellectual approach to all of this is very important. It's very important to be thorough here, and that's why I'm doing things the way I am. So like and subscribe, and please share the video. This is the Unwilling Pawn, signing off.